So we're going to start off with the center guide here, okay? First thing we got to do, and as you can see, I already cut the tubing and got it preset for holding my guide on. I want to grab my denatured alcohol, which probably is another good thing to have. If you don't have denatured alcohol, you could probably use pretty much anything for cleaning, even water, I'm sure. But this helps clean the surfaces before you start wrapping and before you start using epoxy, getting it all squared away, right? So I'm just gonna take this little microfiber, I'm gonna dip it in here. I'm just gonna give it a little once over, right? I'm gonna give it once over like so, just to get the surface clean. All right. You notice I do have a little bit of residue left over on this part. It's not gonna hurt anything, okay? It's not gonna hurt anything at all. You don't wanna, I didn't wanna go too hard on it and end up cutting into my blank. Like I said in the last episode, that kind of stuff will ruin a blank real fast, okay? So, and honestly, like I said, you don't need anything fancy. You can literally take the thread, put it between your knees, and wrap the guide like that. I just like doing this. I do build rods, so this makes it quite easy when getting started on it. Okay, as you see, I took my guide and I put the first foot in between that little rubber tubing. Okay. So I'm gonna look at the rod and give it, kind of an eyeball of where I think I should start wrapping, right? And right here is where I'm gonna start it. And all you're gonna do is you're gonna take your thread and you're just gonna wrap it around like so a couple times. Now, I'm not gonna sit there and say this is the proper way to do it. This is how I do it. There's 1,000 ways to skin a cat, right? All right, so once you get your thread started and you got your tag in here, you want to let your thread hang, in my case, to the right. And then I'm just going to start turning the rod. And what that's going to do, it's going to allow that overlapping thread to kind of clinch it down. And I'm using my tool here to just get it nice and tight. And we're just going to go over this a couple times to make sure I get that tag in clenched down real well. Once you feel like it's clenched real well, you can move them threads over a little bit, like I'm doing here, and try to get them nice and tight and close together. So once we get that thread wrapped down tight, we're going to take our blade here. We're just going to lay the blade against the rod blank, flat against it, and cut the thread in, or the tag in. And then we just start wrapping. So we're just going to wrap. We're going to use our little tool here. Make sure everything stays. Make sure it stays nice and tight. just like this. All right. So we're gonna keep wrapping. Once I get them all wrapped up, we'll go down to the next step. All right, so you notice that we have our wrap further up on the guide foot now, that we can go ahead and we can use our blade and remove the rubber band. All right. And all you're going to do, once you get that rubber band out, you're just going to wrap it some more. Wrap it all the way up as far as you can go. That's how I do it. Okay, so we got the wrap all the way up to the guide, to the end of the guide, covering the entire foot. Now what we need to do is tie it off. Okay, for that, I just take an extra piece of thread and I just make a little loop. I take it and I put it right in between, just up between the thread that I'm wrapping, in between that tagging, and I give her a couple more wraps. Okay, now in my case with this machine, this little contraption here, I gotta give it some slack because I don't want it to bounce back too much. And I'm just gonna cut the thread. I'm gonna take my tag in, I'm just gonna send it through this loop. You want to make sure you hold it tight because you don't want to lose all that wrapping you did. So I'll send it through the loop if I can get it. It's kind of a, there we go. All right, once you get it through the loop, just pull down tight in the angle that you were wrapping. Then you're gonna take your little loop here and you're just gonna pull it on through. Now we'll pull your tag in and clench it down. Now with these double foot guides, there's two ways to do it. You can start from this side and wrap this way, or you can flip your rod around and do it the same way. I'm more comfortable doing it that way than I am wrapping from this direction back. So I'll probably end up flipping around. That's pretty much it. I'm going to do that with the other foot. And then I'll show you how I singe it down. We got our guide wrapped on. And I'm pretty sure you can use your heat gun for this. But I'm going to go with the alcohol burner just because I know it works. Maybe someone can chime in and let me know for sure if the heat gun will do the job. But we're going to go ahead and light this sucker up. And just all you're going to do, I'm going to remove these little rubber bands here. And we're going to take it and we're just going to go lightly through like so. And that basically takes off any fuzzies on the threads and cinches that tag in that you had sticking out. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to take with my little razor blade here, and I'm just going to cut some of this epoxy off. All right, take it, I'm just going to cut it thin enough to where I can put this inside the tube of the guide. All right, so after we get that epoxy in there inside that tube, we're going to want to get some pliers because this thing is going to get hot. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a lighter or heat lamp. You're just going to run it across the tip top guide to melt that epoxy in there. It doesn't take much. A couple quick swoops, and you're going to take it, you're put it on the end of your rod. You want to try to make sure you get that guide all the way in there. And line it up the best you can. So once we got our tip top guide on there, we are ready to wrap it. Alright then, so we have both our guides wrapped, ready to go. Now for the final step, the epoxy step. 2-part epoxy. You want it to be exactly even. So you want to have an idea of how much epoxy you're going to need. And you want it to be even as possible. A little too much of that one, so I'm just going to kind of top it off. There we go. Got your epoxy evened out, and all you need is a little popsicle stick or a little something like that, and you're just going to sit here and you're going to stir it. I usually stir it for something around 5 minutes, but you just want it to be even in color. You don't want it to look milky or anything, and you want to avoid bubbles. That is the whole purpose. Now I'm going to make you sit here and watch me stir it for 5 minutes. I'm just kidding. I'm going to go ahead and get this epoxy ready, and we're going to go ahead and show you how we apply it. Now, all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brush, dip it in the epoxy, and get a nice little bead going. And that's how I'm going to start my first spot. I want to get a nice solid bead going. And you don't want to smash the epoxy into the rod blink. You want to just kind of control that bead more than anything. Let me see if I can adjust the camera. It's a little hard to do with the camera, but as you see, I'm not really pushing it into the rod. Now, once you get that first bead on there, then you're going to take it and you're going to brush it into the threads. You want it to soak into them threads. Don't be afraid to use epoxy. I'm just going to soak it right into the threads like that. Give it a nice go around. And then I want to make sure that I try it. I like to do this. I don't know if this is necessary as well. I like to try to seal where the guide opening is under the thread, because that's going to keep water from getting access under there and causing any kind of corrosion. Same thing for the tip top guide. We're going to move down here, and all we're going to do get that nice bead going. And you're just gonna take a big old glob. You're just gonna brush it right into the threads. I went ahead and turned my heat gun on. I'm gonna let it heat up a little bit. And what we're gonna do is we're just gonna go over just like this. I wanna make sure that I try to get as much of the bubbles out as possible. And what it does too is it kind of melts some of that excess stuff off to help even it out, right? And that's all you're gonna do. A quick glance over it, nothing crazy. All right. And that's pretty much it. That is how you repair your rod guides.